Hello and welcome to Lunch and Learn with Vince. I have a special guest today. His name is Will Zell, who is the chairman of Nikola Labs. Do I have that right?
Nikola
Labs.
Vince. Awesome. Great to be with you today.
It's my pleasure. And the first thing that I, jumped off the screen at me was that you were acknowledged by the White House as a top entrepreneur under 30, under the age of 30. And tell me a little bit about that and then bring us up to speed as to where we are today. I know that happened about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I was just going to say my first comment is it's unfortunate that I can say it's now been a decade ago. So no longer under 30. But it was a great honor to be recognized as part of something called the Entrepreneurship Impact Showcase, which was a conference in Washington, D.C., all around entrepreneurship and emerging entrepreneurs across the country. And then they did the Impact 100, which was a recognition, of the top 100 entrepreneurs in the U.S. under 30. And it was a great experience, great exposure, great platform. I was in primarily building real estate business at that time, and that kind of was the beginning of my shift more towards tech startups, which ultimately led to being a co-founder of Nikola Labs. So it's been a great journey since that time.
Great. Well, tell me a little bit about Nikola Labs then. Where are we today?
Yeah. So Nikola Labs, it's been a very interesting journey. So the company was started at the end of 2014 as a spin out from The Ohio State University. So Ohio State has a very strong research foundation in radio frequency technologies. And a researcher there in particular, Dr. Chi-Chi Chen, was working on some really unique technology in and around, let's call it foundational technology for the Internet of Things, primarily delivering power wirelessly to low power sensors and mobile electronics, and then the accompanying system around wireless power transfer that would enable a wireless sensor not to last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So the company was built on the foundation of can we solve the power problem as things like Industry 4.0 begin to really take off, and we think about distributing sensors everywhere. Now, it's been a real challenging and fun and crazy journey from where we started to where we are today. Wireless power itself is a technology that is most constrained today by regulations. So it's very difficult for anybody to get meaningful wireless power technology to market. So we've really been able to leverage the other tech that we built around that core technology and narrow our focus into what started as sensor-based condition monitoring, specifically vibration analysis. And we launched a platform for that at the end of 2018. And have really grown as an organization, now focused on what I would call this kind of transformation, this fundamental transformation that's happening in manufacturing organizations around going from reactive maintenance culture to proactive maintenance culture. And I think it's a really compelling transformation that's happening, and we want to emerge as one of the leaders in this space. So how do you really attack the problem of unplanned downtime and its effects in terms of a manufacturing facility or organization? And if the more we can shift the time spent by a maintenance and reliability team from reacting to problems to proactively addressing them, the more of an impact we can have on eliminating unplanned downtime. And that's our goal: is how do we get rid of unplanned downtime forever for our customers?
That's awesome. Now, I guess I couldn't let this whole podcast occur without at least acknowledging the fact that we had an interesting virus pop up called COVID this past year. It really caused a lot of challenges in the industry, and remote monitoring became a real buzzword, or became more of an essential need over the past year or two. And I'm wondering, did that perpetuate things a little bit more, or push fast forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the timing was actually really interesting between COVID-19 and just where the adoption of remote monitoring was. So if you know much about adoption curves of technology, you start with kind of innovators, the people who are really just the people who are talking about remote monitoring 5, 6, 7 years ago. And then you move into this early adopter phase, which are the people who adopt the technology, take the risk, and are on the journey of really proving out whether or not there's viability in terms of cost and benefit savings, so on and so forth.
Right.
And we are just, from my perspective, really starting to emerge from the early adopter phase into the first wave of mass market adoption when COVID hit. And so it was a short-term challenge, but really long-term opportunity. The short-term challenge was when everything shut down, we were no longer able to travel and go out and install systems into in our customers' facilities. But as things have opened back up, we've seen more and more and more of a buy-in of sensor-based condition monitoring and remote monitoring specifically. So it's partially to do with COVID, but I actually think COVID is further down the list than just the fact that the fundamental value that is delivered for sensor-based remote condition monitoring is proving out to be significantly greater than the status quo, whether that's break fix or whether that is route-based monitoring that's much more periodic than the type of monitoring you can achieve with sensors. So I think it's helping overall. The fact that you could have a maintenance or reliability team monitor all their critical equipment from their living room or from a beach, it doesn't really matter. They've got access to the platform that can give them the critical information that they need, and then interface with teams in the facility. So I think it was helpful, but really what the big lift that we're seeing in this market is really because of just the fundamental value is being proven out.
I love it. I think it's great. Can we see one of these monitors or
Yeah, absolutely.
sensors?
Sure.
So how are they attached to the machine? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. No. So if I could kind of describe a little bit about the journey that we've been on. So we launched our first generation system back, as I mentioned, kind of end of 2018, early 2019. And in technology, we launched what is considered a minimal viable product. So we kind of gathered information from the market, put together our first version, put it out there into the world, and really just started learning from our customers. And it's that customer journey and those relationships, especially with early customers, that is incredibly valuable. And so I would say at that time, we started much more as a hardware focused company. But because our customers were asking for more and more and more, we've actually grown to this, let's say, full service, all-in-one condition monitoring platform. And where we're heading in the future, it actually expands the capabilities more around launching what we consider to be a proactive maintenance platform. But in the context of vibration analysis, what we're looking at here is our second generation. So we took a lot of the feedback from our first generation, developed it, managed through COVID and all of the supply chain issues that we've been having. And we've recently launched our second generation platform. So on the left, you have a communications hub. So anyone who saw our first generation communications hub, it was rather large. So this is a pleasant upgrade to a much smaller communications hub. And what this does is its primary responsibility is to communicate with the sensor. And it's a wireless sensor that you see on the right. And it captures the vibration data from the sensor and then wirelessly transmit it generally through a cell network that we've also installed at a customer facility to get the data up to the cloud. And in the second generation system, we can also do over the air, so we can access all of our sensors through these hubs, whether we need to do a firmware update, whether we need to do, push vibration reading, at a very specific time, as opposed to, let's say, the schedule that it's currently on. So we have the ability to invoke readings. So, you're always managing, because development timelines with hardware is much different than development timelines with software. So whenever you're thinking about next generation, you're trying to build in enough capacity, generally from a computing perspective and feature function perspective, that you can innovate continuously through software and firmware. And that's what we've been able to achieve in this second generation. So it's out there, it's in the field. We're installing a lot of them, and so far our customers really appreciate the ruggedness and durability of it. And our customers are really across pretty much any industry. You can see them on the left, but basically, what we're focused on is vibration monitoring on rotating equipment, because it's the path to seeing potential failure coming weeks, if not months ahead of it manifesting in terms of a breakdown of that component. So if you can give maintenance teams, reliability teams enough lead time and have kind of this continuous monitoring of a piece of equipment as it's kind of going through that PF curve, if you can keep them attuned on where the degradation is or where the potential issue is, and kind of a good understanding of how close you are away from failure, then that maintenance team can go in and proactively work to address those issues during planned downtime. And that's, for me, one of the most fundamental shifts is how we shift from responding to a breakdown event to preventing a breakdown event. If you look at the delta between those two occurrences in terms of value for a manufacturer, it's significant. I actually often relate this because it is very technical, especially when you're talking about vibration data. So for more of a layman like me, I think of it like going to a cardiologist. And so, if I go and have an EKG performed on my heart, I'm going to be looking at squiggly lines on the screen, but the cardiologist is going to be able to look at those squiggly lines and potentially see dozens of different issues that could be going on with my heart, and then they can prescribe proactive measures in order to fix that. So the delta between a heart attack and prevention is a big delta. And then if you take a technological leap now to an Apple Watch, where I can periodically run an EKG without ever going to the doctor, so the cost is significantly lower. The value of the technology in more real time could potentially give me a much more advanced notice of something potentially going wrong. I'm not waiting till I have a pain in my chest to spur going into the doctor. I've got a device on my wrist that was telling me 4 or 5 or 6 months ago that something potentially could be going on. So that shift is what we're really focused on.
All right. So the smaller device that's on the right, that's the actual vibration sensor. How many of those would you install? Let's just take a particular pump and a motor that's attached to it. Those are both pieces of rotating equipment. Does one go on the pump, one go on the motor? Do 2 or 3 go on each? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, on that setup, you'd probably have 3 or 4. So you'd likely have probably 4 typically. So we have a team of we call them condition monitoring engineers. These are trained vibration analysts, level 2, level 3, level 4 vibration analysts. And what they do is they interface with our customers to make sure that we have identified all of the critical monitoring points. And these sensors are, very easy to install. They're magnetically mounted. We'd send out a field service team to do the installation. So the field service team works with our condition monitoring engineer and the customer to make sure that we have all of those critical points covered. But on an asset like you described, I think 4 is a pretty fair number.
So 2 and 2, 2 on the motor, 2 on the pump?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And so does for example, the 2 on the motor, or I'm sorry, the 2 on the pump, what typically does it then, going back to your cardiologist example with the different undulation of these waves and frequency, what does the typically is the causation of this vibration? Is it cavitation? Is it misalignment? I mean, what typically is the culprit?
So it can actually be all of the above. And what's interesting is, cavitation is going to look different in the data than misalignment. And that's where you can get actually very prescriptive. And you can go all the way down to like soft foot, a mounting issue, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So there are a large number of very specific issues that they manifest pretty differently in terms of vibration data. And that's what so both our condition monitoring engineers as well as the machine learning that we have running in the background are all to very quickly dive down to the root cause of this data, and then of what we're seeing. And then what we do is we issue what we call a prescriptive asset alert. So when we send something to a customer, it's not a threshold has been breached, so here's an alert. What we actually do, our team and our machine learning algorithms do the analysis. And what we send to our customer is a prescriptive asset alert to say, here is the specific sensor, the component that it's monitoring. Here's what we're seeing in the data and recommended action. Because again, everything is about saving time between kind of the detection of the issue and the resolution of the issue. So we try to avoid things like false flags because of just some anomaly that caused a sensor to go above a threshold. We really try to narrow in on like precision action that we can prescribe to our customer, so that their time is most optimally used in the effort to address any issue that exists.
Interesting.
Yep.
So, what else do you have that you're evolving daily, I'm sure. So where else are you going with this? Are these sensors and devices? I mean, 7 to 10 year battery life. That's
Yeah.
impressive. As of today, that's impressive. Are you looking at longer term, or are you looking at smaller devices, or what do we?
Yeah, so the device is pretty small. I think we'll continue to evolve our own hardware over time. I would say the base hardware that we have in these sensors is good and will likely be state of the art for the next decade. And then our ability to actually add new features via firmware is also really important. So we'll continue to do some development of our own hardware. We've got a lot of strong capabilities, but where we're heading and what I'm very excited about at Nikola Labs is around this concept of a proactive maintenance platform. So for what we believe is the big opportunity here, and something that we don't really see out in the market right now, is a platform that is built for action, that does what I mentioned earlier. It compresses time, energy, and effort from the detection of a potential issue to the resolution of it. And how do we remove friction, remove time, remove effort from our customer by connecting in all of the critical sources of inputs into the platform, and then integration into all of the required outputs to get to resolution. So you have detection coming in, resolution going out, and then understanding after that. And so that's the platform that we've launched. Actually, we've launched it to our customers, and it is what I really see this platform becoming is a true enterprise platform for global manufacturers that serves specifically the maintenance and reliability teams at the facility and corporate level, and then provides value all the way up and down the organization there, from operations all the way up to finance. So a lot of our internal development is focused on building it out. We've got a ton of data. I mean, just in the last less than 2 years, we've captured 85 million full spectral vibration readings. So we've got, for our customers, we've got a lot of value that we could deliver and have delivered. And then as we can create and pull together more inputs, we believe we can have more meaningful outputs to our customer.
That is truly amazing. I'm trying to, without getting too materialistic here, I'm trying to look at what is the cost, what's the
Yep.
ROI. I'm sure you have all these examples where, I mean, to me, it just sounds like a tremendous opportunity if you can keep the cost low,
Yep.
and then you can demonstrate to a customer that while your engineer was sitting on the beach, he got an alert on his phone, and he saved what would have been a $300,000 an hour
Yeah.
operation from going down. So whatever you're paying that engineer was a smart investment, because he had the ability to interpret the warning in such a way that he saved the company significant downtime. So in a way, the the data is good, the alerting is good, but you still have to have somebody that's going to raise the flag and go, hold on, we now have to take action. Am I right,
Yep.
or am I wrong there?
100%. And that's, how we've developed our culture as a company. Yeah, I would say there are two kind of fundamental principles that we believe that drive what you're talking about. So number one, we want to create 30-year relationships with our customers, right? We're not there just to sell them technology and walk away. We want to create very long, meaningful relationships with our customers, and we want that to be driven off of real value demonstrated. So with emerging technologies, you always have to get over the proof needs to be in the pudding, if you will, right? So how do you make it as simple for a customer to taste the pudding as you possibly can, right? To see the proof. So one of the things that we did is we actually have packaged all of this as a subscription service. So if you think about going and installing wireless sensors on, let's say, 100 assets, so 300 400 sensors, and if you had to do all of the installation, pay for it up front, pay for all the sensors up front, pay for licensing of software up front, you're looking at several hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million plus, to pull off that program. And how do you know that the value is going to be delivered, right? So we were one of the early innovators in turning this model on the head and saying, rather than doing that, we'll come in, we're going to charge you $199 installation fee. We're going to give you 30 days free in terms of the subscription. And then starting day 31, we're going to bill you at a price per monitoring point, all inclusive. So you get literally everything for a very simple and transparent price per monitoring point. And what that allows us to do is we have a high level of confidence now that when we go in and install over a 30-day time period, in most instances, we're going to be able to show potential machine issues and start to build that trust. Because for us, it is that trust building, that relationship building, not during a sales process of you just need to believe me, but you're actually seeing this and we're delivering the value. And that's we've seen a lot of adoption. When we first started thinking about this, a lot of feedback that we got was that customers would want to look at this more as a CapEx versus operating, and it really hasn't proven out to be an issue. I think there's a good amount of appreciation, and what we want is we want to deliver value, and if we can deliver value, then let's grow this relationship together. And again, because we know that in the context of eliminating unplanned downtime or drastically reducing unplanned downtime related to rotating equipment, we're really just in the first inning of how technology can be leveraged to empower the maintenance team in the facility or the reliability team in the facility to truly be proactive. We're just in the early stages of innovation.
Awesome. So without revealing names of your customers and actual situations, I mean, can you give me a good story where you came in and saved the day? I mean, again, it's up to you how deep you want to go, but for our listeners, these are long format podcasts where if you've got photos, video, anything that you want to share, I welcome that to contribute. And again, we are sensitive to the fact that not everybody wants their dirty laundry aired out there, so you may want to censor who it is, but you're more than welcome to share how you saved a day. I'd love to hear that.
Yep. So we actually are going to have a long case study that we're doing with a large manufacturer that everybody would know. And I won't share the name now, but we'll, probably within the next few weeks have this released. And it was one of our first customers, which was interesting. They were one of the customers that took an early bet on us. And we've built that relationship really through the organization over the last couple of years. And in one of their most important facilities for their operations, and this is probably the third or fourth facility that we had installed of theirs. But in this particular facility, we did a first installation. It would have been in September of 2020. And they did an internal study between September of 2020 and March of 21. So it was a 6-month study. And over that time period, and again, this is their internal data, they spent about $12,500 with us of subscription costs. So again, just paying monthly per monitoring point per sensor that's in the facility. During that same time period, we delivered over $625,000 in savings related to preventing unplanned downtime. So those, and let me actually share my screen again. You can actually go to our website, and you can see we have a whole on resources. We have case studies right here. And I would encourage anyone to go in and check this out. Most of these, the customer is not listed per se, but you can get a good sense of the industry. So in a lumber mill, and we have something that we call a dynamic ROI. This is a tool that we're continuously developing, but because customers pay for our system on a monthly subscription, and we're saving, preventing unplanned downtime in real time, you can actually compare the cost that they pay in subscriptions over time against the amount of savings that we've delivered. And we call that dynamic ROI, because beforehand, again, if you had to buy everything up front and spend $750,000 up front, you had to run this kind of ROI calculation to try to figure out whether or not this was worth it. We're believers and think it's way better for the customer if let's just track this in real time. So we've got, and again, we're developing this view on our software in the background, but the ability to really see how much they've spent with us against, from their own data, how much savings have been delivered. Because at the end of the day, if it is not absolutely clear that we have delivered data, then it doesn't make sense, or we have delivered value, then
Right.
then it's up to the customer to figure out if the relationship needs to continue. So we want to put ourselves out there because we really believe that through proactive maintenance, great gains can be had in terms of reducing unplanned downtime and its effects. There are a lot of significant kind of first order, second order effects that are related to unplanned downtime. But in each of these case studies, we talk about the problem, the solution, and generally time bound if it was a 30-day type of analysis or whatever it may be. So in this particular case, we had delivered over $80,000 in savings to our customer, which was a 21x ROI based on what they had spent in the same period of time. So we've got a lot of these that, and more every single week we're creating these great wins. So I think we're actually coming up on close to 1,000 what we would consider critical issues with our customers that we've been able to prevent.
That is fantastic. I can only see this is just getting better and better for you guys. So congratulations on that. I noticed you had lumber, you had pulp and paper, oil and gas. Where would this tie in? I saw mining as well. Mining is has its own set of challenges because I cannot recall the it's some kind of alphabet soup that you have to have this particular type of quality on mining equipment or it doesn't go in that mine.
Sure.
So it's like a UL approved device or API, but mining has their own set of terminology and criteria. Are you?
So I think you may be talking about like class 1 div 1 or class 1 div 2. So
But there's also like the Mining Apparatus Association of America that
yeah,
says that you can have this in there because it will not emit sparks or
correct. Yep.
whatever, you know. So and again, if you're in mining, ping me. You know, I'll take criticism well, because I claim to be the guy that just asks the questions. I'm a regular guy. I don't know all the answers, but I do in my days of traveling and sales, talking to a mining company here in Alabama, and they said, you know, it has to have this particular stamp of approval or it can't
Yep.
go in there. So tell me
Yeah.
about your.
Yeah, so we're especially for our second generation, and then some of the partner sensors that we may bring on board, because as part of our asset watch platform, which is that proactive maintenance platform that I was discussing. One of the unique innovations that we're going to bring to our customers is the ability to capture data from other sensors, so sensors that aren't just developed by Nikola Labs. So how do you create this kind of platform of condition monitoring sensors that all feed into asset watch in order to create those outputs? So in our second generation, we're in the approval process for class 1 div 2, which can get you into some extreme environments, which is good. Generally, I think in most mines, it's the equivalent of class 1 div 1. So like like everything around, if there's any risk of any spark in any kind of crazy situation, it just can't be installed. So we find with our mining customers that generally there are critical assets, whether they're surface assets or in parts of their operations that aren't within that classification, but they're still really critical. And I think it's an important note that, in an operation, in a facility, in a mining operation, you're not with this system going to install on every piece of rotating equipment. What you really want to find are those pain points, whether it's cost of the actual equipment itself if it fails, or criticality within the process. So if you can identify that top 20-25% of critical components, then you generally have a very strong cost benefit analysis to implement sensor-based condition monitoring.
Sure. I would imagine that two of them that are topside, one would be power and the other would be oxygen or air.
Yep.
Both of those require either compressors or rotating equipment of some kind, and to have your device on there to establish whether these are going to become problematic in 5 or 7 or 10 days, and we could proactively go in there and repair or change out or whatever else your product would tell an engineer to do or maintenance person to do.
Yep.
You're saving lives and making things more convenient for everybody in the long run. So it makes sense to me.
Yep. Those are the big wins.
Yeah.
And it's also important to note that once our condition monitoring engineers have sent over a prescriptive asset alert, so they've given very prescriptive action to take, they're not done, right? Like we view ourselves as an extension of our customer's team, that CME will work. So like if the maintenance team is out there working on a fix or kind of trying to get everything back up and testing whether or not everything was installed properly, our condition monitoring engineers are readily available and they can do all of this remote to be there as part of the solution. And that's for me we've got to be able to have as much passion, if you will, internally at Nikola Labs as our customers do for the equipment that they care about. And if we can have an extension of that, even though we're a third party relationship, then I think that's how we'll achieve those 30-year relationships that we're really aiming for.
Well, that and the ROI that is dynamic, I think, is a fantastic business. I don't know anybody else that offers that.
We trademarked it. So,
yeah. Let me get. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the hazards of recording where your phone is.
Okay.
So, but no, that I'm glad you trademarked it, because that is something that I think is going to be a showstopper, a big item as you move forward. I'm looking at the old world where you would slap a vibration analysis device on equipment and you would align the pump and the motor, and maybe a coupling shaft between the two, and make sure that everything is happy.
Yep.
And then you detach this equipment and walk over to something else over there,
Yep.
right? And so that was typically the way things were done, or have been done, or are still being done in a lot of cases. Maybe you tell me if I'm wrong there, but that's the old world. That's how things were done. And how how is the how are you dealing with pushback from the I don't want to say the old guard, because I'm part of the old guard. I mean, I was around during Woodstock, and when I was 10 years old, I lived in LA, and I was 8 during Woodstock, and I've been around a while.
Yep.
But I mean, there is a resistance to change that's just typical out there, and how do you deal with that? How is that going?
Yeah, the first and foremost thing that I would say, and I hope it's evident in how I've described our business, is that uh, I'm a big believer that's going to be a very, 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 very long time before you will no longer need a human vibration expert to really deliver the ultimate value. And we've got machine learning algorithms, we've got a lot of software that's processing data, but that human interface, because there's just so much context once you think you've seen an issue, there's so much context between that and resolution that you want to have that human interaction. So we've never viewed ourselves, and there are a lot of technology companies. I'll say, one of our biggest drivers. They don't say it out front, but they'll say it behind the scenes, especially if they're selling to management. Is that one of our biggest values is you can reduce headcount. For me, this whole transformation is not around eliminating headcount. It's really about like how you optimize the people that you have. Like the vast majority, from what we understand in relationships we have, a lot of maintenance teams and facilities are inherently reactive. Like they're just responding to the next thing that's broken. So there's a ton of work to do to make them more proactive. And then for I would say, let's say the route-based vibration analysts that have, whether it's internal or third party, those are the people that we want to build a relationship with, because again, they're the people that are on our condition monitoring team. If you think about like the fundamental value for, let's say a third party vibration analyst that's coming in and has relationships with a dozen, companies or facilities, they're ultimately going to be constrained by their time in terms of the amount of data that they can capture, right? Because they have to go there, you have to walk the route, you have to monitor, capture the data, take it back, process it, and send a report. So there's just the capacity, because of that time restraint, is it's capped. What we do is we kind of blow that open, right? So we can have 300 sensors 8 to 10 to 12 times a day doing full spectral vibration capture, and all that report up to the cloud. So you still need the expertise of the vibration analyst. Like we want them on our team. We want to like, how do we empower them to do their job at 10x, 100x better, more and more efficient and safer than what they're currently doing today. So you kind of blow the top off the capacity of data capture, and then our platform is all around processing the data and distilling it down to identify the key issues that trained vibration analysts can go in and study, and then give a very prescriptive recommendation. So I get and I understand, and we've dealt with this, that kind of old guard versus new guard friction that exists. But the more the more I can have these types of conversations, which is like, we're highly collaborative, because if you look at the number of critical pieces of rotating equipment that exist in, let's say, the United States today across process manufacturing, there are tens of millions of pieces of equipment that should have monitoring done on them today, but they don't, because you've had this constraint of human capability and capacity and cost. And we can replace that with sensors and still like give the vibration analysts way more to do in terms of comparing what they were doing traditionally.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you this. Inevitably, when you install a product at a customer's facility, you're going to encounter feedback and unsolicited comments and advice and criticisms. And gee, if it only had temperature sensors and other things,
Yep.
So my question to you is, what through the startup to today, what have customers come back to you with to say, hey, this is great, but it would be really great if it could do X or Y or Z. And of those items, the X, Y, and the Z, what have you adopted or pulled into your system and said, you know what? Hell, I wish I thought that. I wish I thought that
Yep.
idea. Wish we had thought of that ourselves. So, can you give me an idea of what a customer or customers have suggested that enhance your product and make it even better?
Absolutely. First thing I'll say is our sensors do have temperature sensors in them as well. So it does vibration and temperature. And I think any technology company that's humble enough will tell you that often if they do it right, their greatest ideas do come from their customers. Right? That's why you want to get something out there early and get feedback. So when we first launched, we just did hardware. We didn't do any of the condition monitoring that I talked about. We didn't have vibration analysts in the house. And the very first thing we heard from customers, this is first part of 2019, is like, all of this data is great, but I have no idea what to do with it. I have no time to like figure it out, and I'm not a traded vibration expert. And so that wave of feedback was like, all right, how do we solve that problem? And that's when we were able to start building our team of vibration analysts, and that team has grown and they're awesome. The prescriptive asset alert, right? So how do you take what the condition monitoring engineer is seeing, and then like make it very tactical for the maintenance team? Not like, here's a problem, but just tell us what needs to be done, was basically what the customer said. Tell us what needs to be done. Integrations into like CMMS platforms. So you can automate a prescriptive asset alert becoming a work order. Team goes out, addresses the work order, comes back, closes it out. It comes back to our system and closes out the prescriptive asset alert, which is a big part of like how you remove friction and save time for the customer. Frankly, and I was one of the leads on the first generation sensor in terms of the design concept. It was bulky, big, and not pretty. So getting feedback around the second generation design enabled us to really bring something that's more sleek, that's very rugged and durable. So those are a few instances. Being able to connect in different like non-Nikola Labs sensors into our Asset Watch platform. Like how, a customer does not want to have 5-10 different software platforms for those different types of condition monitoring. So how do you pull all of that together? So the short answer is basically everything, Vince.
Yeah.
But hopefully that's a little longer description of very specific features and functions that really have been driven off of feedback from our customers.
Right. Well, I mean, you're talking to somebody that helped launch 3 or 4 startups over the years.
Awesome.
And
That's
so
great.
it's challenging because, it's a battle of egos sometimes when you're telling the owner or the boss, hey, don't shoot me. The customer asked for this,
Yeah.
So I know how it is. I mean, but it's great to see that you guys are receptive and willing to make those adaptations to please the client and
Yeah.
ultimately make your product better. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it's led us into like what we think the really, really big opportunity is in this space to create the most meaningful value for global manufacturers. And it's that proactive maintenance platform that I discussed, and it becomes a platform for, again, continued innovation over the next several decades. And I believe our customers by and large, and there have been like managing through COVID, one of the most frustrating things was we had a couple of projects that we were in development to try to get across the finish line. It just paused, right, and delayed, and a couple of them we had to shelf for a little while. So at that point, you just have to be humble with your customers, and like our intention, our culture hasn't changed. We're managing through this craziness, just like everybody else is. And by and large, our customers have been really supportive, and hopefully will attest to, if nothing else, our willingness to listen and respond.
So let me ask you this: your group of vibration analysis experts, I guess you could say your team of experts. To me, again, it sounds like you may have, to use the analogy of heart monitoring again, um, you may have a cardiologist in India, another one in Japan,
Yep.
10 or 20 in Texas, and 50 in Chicago, right? So you have
Yep.
all these different guys and women. And by the way, we'll talk about women here in a minute, but it's not gender specific anymore.
Sure.
There's geniuses out there and all races and genders. And um, the one thing I want to share though is that my vision is that you're feeding this to a bank of experts who then collaborate and analyze these undulations and come up with some kind of a conclusion as to what a remedy would be. And when they all agree, or when most of them agree, then they shoot that out to the customer. Ultimately, this automation type process would be one day maintenance gets an impeller for pump number 123, and it says replace the impeller, and he does the job and has no idea why that was, it was just part of his day-to-day maintenance routine to go to that pump, pull that old impeller, put the new one in, and that had everything to do with the sensors telling this group that this is what's going on, therefore this will solve it, and therefore it's kind of an enclosed circuit. Am I close to how that would work? Or?
You're tapping into our vision, man.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
think, and the words are kind of very intentional. Proactive maintenance platform, right? That is what we're building with Asset Watch, because that can happen, and that's not a 10-year thing. That's we're starting to build it now, which is, and it's compressing time and effort and energy of our customers to go from detection to resolution. So all of this flows through. You see, the instant issue that you discussed. There's an impeller that needs to be swapped out, and then on the outputs, we have the ability to automate the ordering of that and connect it and ship it to the customer facility. It shows up. It's in their CMMS to when the task, what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. And the only thing they have to think about are the proactive measures that they're taking, and then how do they continue to improve systems overall, right? And that's, if my greatest hope is in 10 years we'll sit down again for a podcast and we will talk about how much maintenance culture and reliability culture has truly become proactive across global manufacturers. Because for me, I personally believe, and it's a big number, but I really genuinely believe it, that trillions of dollars of value can be created for global manufacturers through this transformation that is again just underway.
Well, I can't guarantee 10 years from now, but I would like to know what you're thinking 2022 is going to bring. Can you give me a short-term vision that you see?
Sure.
Is anything else coming? Go ahead.
Yeah. So a couple things. We're in a pretty strong growth mode right now, frankly. So we're expanding in our customers as they see the value. They'll go from 1 facility to 5 facilities to 20 facilities. And so we're really kind of building out those enterprise level relationships, and we'll continue to do that. I mean, we're just scratching the surface in terms of opportunities to build relationships with customers. And we're building our team to keep up with that pace. One of the exciting things is we're going to start to install internationally, which is great. We do have an incredible strategic relationship with ATS. So they're one of the leaders in kind of third-party maintenance services for manufacturing organizations and a number of other things that they do for manufacturers. They came in and made a strategic investment into Nikola Labs early this year, and we've got a very strong relationship with their team, all around kind of this aligned vision for the future. So that'll continue to grow. We are really starting to plug in some of those third-party modules, if you will, into Asset Watch, both on the inputs and the output side. So, I mean, it's, I can't say enough about our team. We've gone to a fully remote team. We're hiring people really across the country right now. And I can't say enough about how passionate our team is, and they're aligned around this vision and see, every day the value that we're creating, and meaningful. Like for me as a individual entrepreneur in my career, like that's what I want to be connected to, is the delivery of true meaningful value to customers in the market, especially if it's an emerging one.
Well, that's fantastic. It sounds like you have no problem sleeping at night because you're helping people.
Yeah, there are plenty of things. There are plenty of things that keep me up, other than that. But that's the I would say.
We'll name one. We'll name one that, as far as it relates to Nikola Labs, and by the way, your website is nikola.tech.com, right?
No, just nikola.tech. There's no .com. So www.nikola.tech.
And that's it.
Yep.
Wow, that's unique in itself, right there. But
yeah.
What does keep somebody like you up? I mean, as far as Nikola.
Sure. So there's in the type of, like, let's say a kind of a fast growing organization, you're kind of pulled in two different directions, right? So you've got speed in terms of growth and the goals that you want to achieve, balanced with making sure that you continue to deliver the value for your customers, right? So you never want to grow at the expense of degrading the experience that you're delivering to your customers. And it's a rubber band, right? There's a lot of tension between the two ends of that spectrum. And that's what we think a lot about. We've got a great leadership team that knows how to do all this, so that helps. But other than that, so that would be the only thing I would say, like, problems to solve and work out at a high level. There are 100 tactical things that come up, but I would say the other reasons that I would be kept up are less about challenges and more about opportunities, right? Like, the dreaming and the ideas, the kind of innovation that we talk about often around, like, what new thing can we come up with that would be just a game changer for our customers, and like just save them a ton of time or reduce friction between point A and point B. And that's the fun stuff to think about at 2:00 in the morning.
Have you thought about going to OEMs, motors and pumps, and preloading these pieces of equipment with it before they ever get out the door?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of opportunity for those types of relationships. I think OEMs are going to have a general challenge, and it's something we'd love to have the conversation with, because we want to kind of serve in this challenge. Is, if you have 12, 10 different OEMs kind of serving a facility, and they have different sensors on them, the customer doesn't want to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 different software applications. So the integration of data for OEMs that choose to, right off the bat, we're going to equip these components with sensors, really ensuring that those sensors have the capability to talk generically, potentially to a number of different end use applications. So I think we've had some of those conversations in the past, and we're going to continue to have those conversations, because it is an obvious value. It's something potentially meaningful from a monetization perspective for the OEM as well. You really want to think about the end user experience and how the data from the sensors ultimately makes it to an application that provides value and helps the customer become proactive.
Yeah, I can see that as a a long-term goal is to try to unify things. So the device that the transponder or the device that goes on the actual rotating equipment, is it epoxied on, bolted on? How does that happen?
It's generally most of the time magnetically mounted. It's a non-ferrous material, then we can do epoxy. And in a few instances at a customer's request, we can bolt on. But generally, what we like to do is to be as minimally invasive as possible on the actual piece of equipment. And sensors or the magnets actually work great. So we haven't seen issues in terms of the ability to detect problems in advance.
No, I think that's great. The magnets are a great idea. Now, are these heavy duty magnets where somebody just can't bump it?
Oh yeah, yeah. You don't want your finger between two when they come together. Yeah. So very, very heavy duty. I don't know the technical spec off the top of my head, but yeah, they do well. We've got a great team of field service technicians that have spent decades in facilities, and they've been very helpful in our product development as well, of like helping us proactively say like, that's not going to work. So like we need to hit certain specs, because what we want to be able to do, and we're proving this out now, is we want to be able to go into a facility, install 250 to 300 sensors in a day, fully connected, taking data and starting to improve value, and being able to install, like having a frictionless installation experience is something that our customers really, really appreciate.
Oh, I'm sure. So, Will, this time just shot by. I don't know if you realize, but we just spent an hour talking. And I want to say a couple of things. First of all, it was delightful to get in touch with you and to actually meet you. And you got a tremendous team. A couple of things that we're at Empowering Pumps that we're involved in. Empowering Pumps is a digital media marketing company for rotating equipment. So clearly we want to talk to folks like you that are helping the rotating equipment industry, and this is truly there. One of the side companies that we have too is Empowering Women in Industry.
Awesome.
And I mentioned that because engineers, they're not just a bunch of guys anymore. I've seen some fantastic women engineers, and we're big on promoting and celebrating their accomplishments as well. So I wanted to just kind of get that out there. There is a trade show coming up in Chicago called WEFTech. It's water and wastewater. Okay. And there's a lot of big OEMs that make pumps and other companies that will be participating there. And what we've done is we align ourselves with WEFTech. We attend that show. And then right after that show, we have an Empowering Women in Industry show the day after. So it's actually kind of, we do that so that if you know anything about WEFTech, it's usually in Chicago one year and in New Orleans the next year, and they kind of go back and forth.
Nice.
And last year, because of COVID, we don't even want to talk about that. But this year we'll be in Chicago. And so the plan is to go to WEFTech and then to celebrate the Empowering Women in Industries as well. And I may actually make several of them that are engineers aware of what you're doing, because they're in the OEM pump and motor industries. So,
awesome.
I'd be happy to drop a word for you. And by the way, let me just talk to the rest of the folks that are watching this right now. Please like, thumbs up, subscribe, share Lunch and Learn with Vince. And also go to Nikola, the website, Nikola.tech.
Nikola.tech, yep.
That's it. Go to Nikola.tech and check out all the details there as well. And I feel like I made a brand new friend, Will.